Well, just as we thought Victoria's COVID case numbers may have turned the corner, today, a shock. In our highest daily total ever, 2,297 cases were recorded in the state today, up more than 800 on yesterday's figures. It takes Victoria's total active cases to more than 20,000. And sadly, 11 people have died from the virus, taking the total death toll to 125 for this outbreak. After nearly 98,000 people received vaccinations yesterday, 87.1% of Victorians over 16 have now had one dose, and 62.6% of those are now fully vaccinated. It's those numbers the government is focusing on. And while it'll be a bumpy ride, the roadmap is still in place. Erin Cooper reports.
At the Warrnambool races, the vaccine passport is this season's must-have accessory.
Jumping with joy, just about.
Great to get out after being locked down all this time. Yeah.
300 people went to the races today, all fully vaccinated.
It's strange to hear the noise again, but it's good to see everyone back.
I think it's really important for everyone to feel safe, so absolutely.
Yeah, and if you want to come to the races, get vaccinated.
It's the biggest trial of Victoria's vaccinated economy so far.
We're just happy to be part of the trial, and again, if we can contribute to things being a bit smoother in, a week's time or thereabouts, it's a good result.
Despite today's record case numbers, scenes like this are still on the cards.
We have fundamentally a very important agreement with the Victorian community. You get vaccinated and we will open up.
While Colac's first dose vaccination rate is 92%, there were queues to get to a doctor allegedly giving vaccine exemptions.
It's very early days, but we are taking action because we can't allow, if they were inappropriately issued, and I don't know whether they were or they weren't, but we can't allow that to occur.
There's certainty for Year 12 students about to sit exams. Students who are primary close contacts will be able to do theirs in a separate room.
All students, other than those who are confirmed cases, all students will be able to sit every single one of their exams.
The government also announced $200 million in funding for mental health support in schools, including therapy dogs.
Because it's scientifically proven that dogs increase our happy hormone, oxytocin, and they decrease our stress hormone, which makes it much easier for children to access their learning.
From tomorrow, mandatory vaccinations will be enforced for thousands of authorised workers, including bottle shop employees, manufacturing workers and personal trainers. Workers will have to have had at least one dose of a COVID vaccination, proof of a booking or a valid exemption to be allowed to go to work. Erin Cooper, ABC News, Melbourne.
The record surge in cases has dampened hopes we've reached a turning point. And as our analyst Casey Briggs explains, the numbers could stay high for a few days yet.
After a couple of very promising days, this outbreak has surged again. And concerningly, more than half of today's cases are inside households that haven't recorded cases through this outbreak, which unfortunately means a lot of these people are likely to have household members test positive in the coming days. The growth is all across Victoria. For example, here's Brimbank LGA, where the trend line continues to grow, but we're actually seeing some bigger spikes outside the hotspot areas of Melbourne. In Frankston, we've seen another record day today. And here's Monash, which had been improving for a few days now, but this rather surprising jump. And it seems there's not any one single event that's caused the spike we've seen today. Health authorities may be playing catch up.
We've seen increased growth in the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne and believe that we do have undetected transmission occurring in the community, which is just coming to the surface.
Whether that undetected transmission has a common seeding point, that's a little bit unclear. Have symptomatic people not been getting tested? But the risk of missing chains of transmission has been rising in Victoria. Here are the test numbers across the state each day, which are growing up to the low 80,000s today. But cases are rising faster than tests, and we're now seeing consistently between 2 and 3% of all tests are coming back positive in Victoria. That's a very good number by international standards, but by Australian standards, with an elimination strategy, some of the worst numbers that we've recorded through the pandemic. But we are in the middle of a transition period, changing strategies from trying to chase down every chain of transmission to accepting that will miss some.
State politicians will now be banned from entering Parliament if they cannot prove they've had at least one COVID vaccination under a plan backed by the major parties. But there were a few dissenting voices, including one Liberal MP who's refusing to get a shot. Here's state political reporter Richard Willingham.
If it's good for workers, it's good for politicians. Backed by the government and opposition, COVID vaccination is now mandatory for all state MPs.
Move for Forest Hill.
But not all Liberals agreed.
Medical apartheid will be commencing in Victoria in a few days' time. Victoria will be a two-class society.
One of the people charged over these violent scenes in the US Capitol in January, Dr Simon Gold, was cited by Liberal MP Neil Angus in his opposition to the plan.
I have certainly had a personal conversation with him, no doubt about that, but you know, I'm not about berating people. When it comes to vaccinations, my point of view is clear. Educate people.
Most importantly, ensures that members of parliament are treated the same way as the rest of Victoria's authorised workers.
Under the rules, MPs will need to provide vaccine records. If they don't, they cannot enter the parliament and their security pass will be cancelled. Despite being jabbed, these two Liberal Democrat MPs won't comply.
Members of Parliament shouldn't have dictated on them which type of medical procedures they have before they can become democratic representatives.
While Parliament sat, the anti-corruption watchdog did not.
Hello.
But pressure remains on the Labor government about how widespread the alleged misuse of taxpayer funds has been.
Whether the Premier did something or didn't do something in the past is actually immaterial. It's the culture that's been allowed to establish itself in this government.
I had to write to the National Executive and ask them to essentially take over the branch is a very clear acknowledgement that yes. Now, that's the party. You're talking about the government. This government's focused on delivering its commitments.
From one scandal to another. This slug that appeared in the kitchen of suburban caterer I Cook Foods, which was closed amid a listeria scare, has been subject to another parliamentary probe. The inquiry found the Health Department had poor processes and communication during the closure. It also failed to be fully transparent with the Parliament amid conflicting claims and allegations of evidence tampering. The matter is being looked at by police, and the owners are seeking tens of millions of dollars in compensation through the courts. It's an issue that won't slither away. Richard Willingham, ABC News, Melbourne.
While Australians are getting ready to travel overseas from next month, over 1.5 million temporary residents are still in limbo. They're not mentioned in Australia's reopening plan, meaning the long-awaited reunions they hope to have with their loved ones will have to wait a little longer.
When Giovanni van Empel left Indonesia 2 years ago to study in Melbourne, he was hoping his family would follow.
The plan was to have my family come and join me. I have a wife and 2 kids who is about 7 and 2 years old, but they couldn't come because of the border shut.
He had to stay in Melbourne to hold on to his scholarship. Mr. van Empel knows he's missed out on a lot, being separated from his children.
Read them stories before bedtime, play with them, and then just to grow up together. But yeah, it's been a long time now.
And he's no closer to knowing when he'll see them again. The federal government has announced it will start reopening international borders from next month. Fully vaccinated Australian citizens and permanent residents will be allowed to freely travel overseas and quarantine at home on their return. But there's no word on when that will happen for temporary visa holders.
We also contributed to the 80% of the vaccination. We've been doing things right, but the question is why can we, also travel abroad and or the family can join us?
The government seems to be treating temporary visa holders yet again as a source of income, but otherwise indispensable and not key members of the community.
There are more than 1.5 million people on temporary visas in Australia. The Department of Home Affairs says it will announce a plan for them while it works through the stages of reopening. U.S. visa holder Jennifer Claiborne has started a parliamentary petition urging the plan to be fast-tracked.
The petition gives us an official central place to take all 1.5 million of us and give us a voice.
Provided that everyone does the same quarantine and looks after themselves with the same health protections, they should be given the same rights.
But until that happens, Giovanni can only see his kids from afar. Helena Suiza, ABC News.